Thank you very much, Sir Hassan Saab. Very nice and very elaborative lecture I have ever seen regarding the basics of biometry in obstetrics. Now, मेरा ख्याल है बहुत सारे लोग शायद चाय नहीं पी के आए थे, उनकी डिमांड थी चाय की, लेकिन हमारे चूंकि लेक्चर्स एक स्केड्यूल के मुताबिक जो थे वो काफी सारे हैं और डेफिनेटली वो आपके लिए हैं, इसीलिए थोड़ी सी जहमत आपको करनी पड़ेगी। हमारे नेक्स्ट स्पीकर, वेरी ऑनरेबल स्पीकर, जिनकी सर्विसेज जनूबी पंजाब के हवाले से मेरा ख्याल है वो पायनियर हैं इस किस्म की जो सिटिंग्स हैं और जो ट्रेनिंग्स हैं। एज ए डायरेक्टर मीनार भी उनकी शोहरत कम नहीं थी, लेकिन उन्होंने अब जो ये जो गेट टुगेदर का सिलसिला स्पेशली रिगार्डिंग अल्ट्रासोनोग्राफी उन्होंने साउथ पंजाब में मुल्तान में शुरू किया है, वो यकीनन इसके पायनियर हैं। मैं चाहूंगा आपकी भरपूर तालियों में डॉक्टर दुरे सभी साहब अपने लेक्चर से तशरीफ लाएंगे और इस सेशन को चेयर करेंगे डॉक्टर मुशर्रफ हसन साहब फ्रॉम कराची। थैंक यू सर।
I can either start with a review of twins, different types and how to diagnose, and then go on to abnormal twinning, or I could jump directly into abnormal twinning and we'll just start from there. Obviously, if it's both part 1 and part 2, it's a longer lecture. So depending on how long you want to sleep, Are you going to do the whole thing or just the abnormal twinning part? Start from the beginning. Begin from the beginning. All right, begin from the beginning. Okay, you see that there are two names on this, and the first name is Joseph A. Warren. Without qualification, the sweetest man in America, the best friend I and Fazil had. He was a gynecologist, a veteran of the Korean War. And then when he became too old to practice gynecology, he shifted to ultrasound and did his RDMS. And he taught both of us so much about obstetrical and gynecological ultrasound. In fact, this was his presentation to start with. And although over the years it has evolved a lot, I did not have the heart to take his name off this presentation. So Alan, wherever you are, he had it. He passed away a few years ago, at the age of perhaps 90 years. Okay, twins are important because they are more prone to problems. You have more maternal issues and more fetal issues and more perinatal issues. So you need to be able to diagnose what is happening, what kind of twinning it is, what are the problems with it, so that you can institute the appropriate management. Everything bad that can happen happens almost twice as much in twins, except post-maturity. If you have a multi-fetal pregnancy, probably they're going to deliver earlier. If it's twins, they're going to deliver at about 35 weeks. And for quadruplets, it can be so bad that they will deliver at 29 weeks. So you need to make sure that you have access to a good neonatal ICU. They have more problems with cerebral palsy, no more neurological issues, more problems of stillbirth, and more incidence of neonatal deaths. So if you're dealing with twins, you really need to sit up and take notice. Ultrasound is very valuable because if you're not doing ultrasound, you're liable to miss twinning till about 26 weeks in about half of your patients. You're liable to miss twins all the way up to full term in about 10% or 15% of your patients. So that's a surprise. One baby is born, you're packing up, you're wrapping up, and wait, there's another one on the way. Even if you're doing ultrasound, you're not a serious ultrasound person unless you've missed a twin, underreported, mistaken a twin for a singleton pregnancy, or you've mistaken a triplet for a twin pregnancy. So these are the issues with twinning multi-fetal pregnancies, and it's always better to start your, well, you don't know if it's going to be a twin or not, but it's always better to do a really very early ultrasound very early on at about 6-7 weeks. For that limited, those small percentage of times where you might be dealing with a twin pregnancy, because they're best caught before 7 weeks. And we're going to talk about that soon. It's about 1% of all pregnancies have twins. Some races have more twinning. For example, Africans have more twinnings. Some families have more twinning, you know. 3 twins, 6 babies and 3 pregnancies, yeah, it's not unheard of. Most of the times it is dizygotic, which means 1 egg, 1 sperm, 1 egg, 1 sperm. So brothers and sisters, or 2 brothers, 2 siblings sharing the uterus at the same time. And that is the best kind of twinning to have actually. And that's fortunately the most frequent type of twinning also. So dizygotic twins, 2 eggs, 2 spermatozoa, 2 fertilized ovum, 2 siblings sharing the uterus at the same time. Monozygotic is when you have 1 fertilized ovum that splits into 2 to give you 2 babies. And the timing of the split and the type of the split, the detail of that actually has a tremendous impact on the sort of twinning that you're going to get. So the earlier the split happens, the more complete the division. So if it's within 3 days of fertilization at the stage of the morula, you're going to have dichorionic, diamniotic twinning. Okay, so this is the best kind of monozygotic twins. So you have 2 placentas and 2 amniotic cavities. If it's a little late, 4 to 8 days, then you have a single placenta. The twinning is a little incomplete, so the placenta has not split, but you still have 2 amniotic cavities. If the splitting occurs even later, for example from day 8 to 13, not only has the placenta not split into 2, you also have a single amniotic cavity. And if you have these, then you're really going to be very careful about these. And if it is even delayed more than that, till about 2 weeks of fertilization, then the splitting is so incomplete that not only do you have a non-split placenta, a non-split amniotic cavity, you also have a non-split baby. So you have conjoined twins and the various forms of conjoined twins. You know, at my age, it's so difficult. I'm never really sure whether I should be wearing glasses or taking off my glasses, because I have to take off my glasses to see the screen and I have to put on my glasses to see you. So I'm going to imagine all of you are there and just not using glasses. So I can't see you, it's just a blur. So we've already discussed that and we're not going to do it again. The important thing is, if you have 1 ovum, 1 fertilized ovum, and it is split, what is it called in usual terms? Identical twins. Okay, but identical twins are not necessarily identical, because the split has not happened exactly in the middle. Although the genetic material is the same in both twins, the protoplasmic material is different. And so you can have all sorts of asymmetries in identical twins. Okay, that might be news to some of you. So identical twins are not necessarily identical. And you can have all sorts of things that are happening in identical twins that lead to asymmetries. How can you be sure of zygosity? Well, the only way to be sure of zygosity is to see if the twins have a different gender or not. If it's a boy and girl, then you're absolutely sure that you are dealing with dizygous twinning. Take a deep breath and relax, because that's the best kind that you can get. But if they have the same gender, they can still be dizygous. Okay, there's nothing preventing to fertilize ova, with the same XY makeup to occupy the uterus at the same time. But then you have lost that very important evidence of the sort of zygosity, of the sort of splitting that might have taken place. So if it's a different gender, you're always sure that it is a dizygotic. If it is dizygotic, then you're always sure that it has to be dichorionic. It has to be diamniotic. So if you see different genders, you don't have to go and start looking for the T sign or the lambda sign or the Pimpic sign. You don't have to look at the thickness of the amniotic, the dividing membrane between the two amniotic cavities. You're sure it is dizygotic. If it is monozygotic, we have already established that it can be monochorionic diamniotic, which is again probably the best kind that you can have. Unfortunately, it is the most frequent type of twinning in monochorionics. It can be dichorionic, diamniotic. Can be monochorionic diamniotic, which is the most common type, where you have a single placenta, two amniotic cavities. Not very good because you have a lot of problems with shunting. Or you can have dichorionic diamniotic, which is again the best kind that we can have. Or it can be monochorionic monoamniotic, which is the rarest twin. And frankly, I see one maybe 1.5 years, 18 months or something like that. So one of the most important things that we are going to do, besides count the number of twins or the number of fetuses in the uterus, is you count the number of placentas. Okay, so if it is the number of placentas equals the number of babies in the uterus, then you can breathe a sigh of relief, and you can say that, okay, this is not going to be a very, very high risk pregnancy. Of course, other things can go wrong, but as far as the structure of the placenta is concerned, it's probably not too bad. And the best time to see the placenta is very early on. Usually we don't recommend doing an ultrasound before the 11 to 13 week scan, and even the ISO guidelines suggest that should be, unless there's a problem, that should be the first ultrasound to do, the 11 to 13 week scan. But if you're very strict about that, you're never doing a 7-week ultrasound, you're probably going to miss a lot of times the information that you could have had at an earlier ultrasound that would have helped you decide if this is going to be a dichorionic pregnancy or not. But however, suppose you've missed that, and you come at 13 weeks or at 20 weeks, and you're going to diagnose whether this is a dichorionic or a monochorionic pregnancy, and we're going to talk about what are the hints that might nudge the diagnosis in one direction. So this is a monochorionic monoamniotic twinning. The red line is the chorionic membrane. The thickened part is the placenta. The green line is the amniotic membrane. Okay, so you have one chorionic membrane surrounding the amniotic cavity. Inside it you have the green amniotic membrane, and you have one placenta, which is shown here as the thickened portion of the chorionic plate. Now you still have one placenta, you still have one chorionic membrane, but you have two amniotic membranes. Okay, so you have two amniotic cavity, and each cavity is surrounded completely by its own amniotic membrane. So you have cavity, amnion, cavity. Okay, so this is a monochorionic diamniotic arrangement of twinning. Alright, so these two amniotic membranes will not appear as two amniotic membranes unless there is a leak or there is a bleed inside those. They will appear as one thin membrane. Just to show you how you get the diamniotic variant of a monochorionic pregnancy. Two placentas, two amniotic cavities, two fetuses. Again, if you can see two placentas at a late pregnancy, you're very happy. If you can see two gestational sacs completely surrounding, two complete gestational sacs early in the pregnancy, you're still sure that you're looking at a dichorionic pregnancy. But what happens if you've missed the 13 weeks or even at 13 weeks and the two placentas are both, let's say, anterior wall, posterior wall, or wherever, they're on the same wall of the uterus. They abut onto each other, they touch each other, and they appear to merge with each other. And that is a difficult situation. And it is there that the challenge appears, and you have to differentiate between two placenta situation versus a single placenta situations. Fortunately, there are pointers and hints that might direct your diagnosis in towards one of the two. One of the things that can happen is that the two placentas on the same wall, as they grow, they push each other, and since both are offering the same sort of resistance, they grow not into each other but into the junction of the two amniotic cavities. Okay, this is something like, how the Himalayas are formed. There is a tectonic plate, Indian tectonic plate, and there is the Chinese tectonic plates, and they're ramming into each other, and at the junction they have sort of lifted up to form the Himalayan mountains. So think of it as a Himalayan mountain. And if you see this extension of the placenta into the boundary, into the junction of the two amniotic membranes, then you can be reasonably sure that you're probably looking at a dichorionic pregnancy. Okay, and this is more clear, and the two placentas also have a slightly differing echogenicity that makes it even easier for you to diagnose. So you're reasonably sure, or you're sure that in this particular case, you're looking at a dichorionic situation. Okay? Twin peak sign, no twin peak sign. But something else is also happening here. Now, if you have two complete units of gestational sac, they are together. What will happen? You will have two amniotic membranes, and you will also have two chorionic membranes. So because you have amnion chorion, and then you have chorion amnion. Alright? And so it follows that these intertwined membranes would tend to be thicker than if this was just two amniotic membranes. Okay? Two gestational sacs, you see how this is going to progress. You have two gestational sacs, these are complete, and you can see that they will have, obviously, they will have a chorionic membrane as well as an amniotic membrane. Well, the amniotic membrane is going to grow from here and it's going to line the chorionic membrane. So you don't have the amniotic membrane right now, but you can imagine what is going to happen. Alright? So you have, again, Alan's images. One of the little story about Alan. He was such a good ultrasound person that his image of nuchal translucency appeared in Time magazine in 1993. So they went through all over the United States. This gentleman was in a small town in Alaska, in Fairbanks, Alaska, and they selected his image, and so it was published in Time magazine. I have that image. I show it when I'm doing my early pregnancy scans. Okay, so you have two separate gestational sacs, no problems with that. You are absolutely sure that you're going to have two placentas, two amniotic cavities, and you're going to have not too bad outcomes. With a monochorionic, you have a very thin membrane here, and you have no membrane here. And if you have no membrane, you have no physical separation, and it is possible for fetal limbs to get entangled, it is possible for the umbilical cord to get entangled. So you have more chances of a cord accident if you are dealing with a monochorionic monoamniotic. Monochorionic placentas are also important because there are intraplacental anastomosis, vascular connections between the placentas, between the circulation of the placental circulation of the two fetuses. And so these can be arterial to arterial, arterial to venous, venous to arterial. And that gives rise to a host of problems that you encounter with monochorionic twins. Okay, these include TTTS. We are going to talk about all of these. How common are these intraplacental shunts? They are very common. So if you're dealing with a monochorionic twinning and you're not dealing with TTTS or some other problem, then you should count yourself lucky. The fact that we do not have more problems is probably due to some sort of protective mechanism that is helping the fetuses grow to their maturity. So you have almost 100% arterial connections in a monoamniotic twin, and you still have a very high arterial connections in a monochorionic diamniotic. Okay, so these intraplacental shuntings are very, very common. As a corollary, monoamniotic twins can also have twin-twin transfusion syndromes. But you invariably miss them. Everybody invariably misses them. They're talking about missing them about 5 times more often than a diamniotic twinning. But I think in our situation, at least, I'm sure I'm missing all of those monoamniotic twin-twin transfusion syndromes. I'm mislabeling them as discordant growth or something else. So, chorionicity, we're going to spend a few slides on how to determine chorionicity. And we've already said that in the early first trimester it's easy, but in later pregnancy it becomes progressively more and more difficult. Few signs are, you can either have a twin peak or lambda sign. If you have a twin peak sign, then you're probably dealing with 2 placentas. You can have 2 separate placentas, which is the easiest situation. You have a placenta on the anterior wall and another on the posterior wall, and they're completely separate from each other, and then you're sure that you're dealing with 2 placentas because you can count 2 placentas. And you can make a diagnosis, or you can suspect a diagnosis on the basis of the thickness of the intertwin membrane. Very thin membrane, probably diamniotic. Thick membrane, probably diamniotic, dichorionic. Okay? But please remember that membrane thickness decreases as pregnancy advances. Okay, so if you're seeing your patient for the first time in the 3rd trimester, you might encounter a very thin membrane even when you have 2 placentas, 2 amniotic. And you must also remember that membranes rupture often. So a diamniotic pregnancy can convert into a monoamniotic pregnancy. So what I'm saying is that we must make sure in our practices that we get a good quality ultrasound early in the pregnancy, because that is the time when you're going to get most of the information if you're dealing with twins. Alright, so twin peak sign, again, it's not always present, but if you do find it, it makes your diagnosis easier. You can count the placentas, and you can look at the membrane thickness also. And we've already discussed that membrane thickness can vary, and your thick membranes can turn into thin membranes as the pregnancy advances. Alright. A twin pregnancy is always bad news because you have more risk of everything going wrong in the twin pregnancies. And of the twins, a monochorionic twin is a higher risk situation than a dichorionic or a dizygotic twin. And what are the problems that can happen in twins that are sharing the same placenta? Or you can have twin-twin transfusion syndromes. Again, something that is not very uncommon. if you are dealing with twins, if you are dealing with a single placenta, you need to be very sure that you are following these pregnancies closely, because you're going to, in a lot of these cases, they might already have TTTS that are unrecognized or under-recognized, or they might develop TTTS as the pregnancy advances. You can have acardiac twinning or trap to reverse arterial perfusion, very dramatic images. I'm going to show you some. You can have conjoining. You can have cord accidents. You can have co-twin demise. You can have twin anemia, polycythemia sequences. You can have discordant growths. You can have so many things that can go wrong. And again, the earlier you catch them, the better it is. And if you're restricting your ultrasound practice to just doing the first scan at 11 to 13 weeks, then probably you're going to be missing the opportunity to make a correct diagnosis in some of your pregnancies. Very early scans, before the embryonic hole has formed or just after the embryonic hole has formed, if you count the number of yolk sacs, that can give you an idea of the number of embryos that you're going to land up with. So the number of yolk sacs equals the number of amniotic cavities. And if you look at a book on embryology, there's always a diagram that shows you how the yolk sac and the amniotic cavity are related, and how it happens that the number of yolk sacs equals the number of amniotic cavities. Two placentas, you can count them, whatever, no problems. See a good 20-week sign, alright, not too bad. You see different genders on fetuses, okay, you're home happy. You're very happy that you're dealing with a dizygotic pregnancy. You can write that in your report, and that will impress the gynecologist hopefully. Now these are the questions that I've been asking myself, and these are the questions that some people have asked me. When you're dealing with twins, how do you date them? Do you use single charts or do you use specialized twin charts? I know there are specialized charts that are designed for twin pregnancies, but can you use singleton charts, because they are so rare to find, and they're always limited by the small number of samples that they have. And how do you calculate AFI in twins? Have you ever thought of that? Let's see. Now, in the first trimester, you can use the CRF, and although it's going to underestimate slightly the age of the twins, it's still adequate. Okay? In the second and third trimester, you can use the other parameters that you're using in the second and third trimester of your pregnancies and still apply them to the twins. If you have asymmetry of size or discordance of growth, you should use the bigger twin to try and date them. Of course, if the LMP is not known and you're left with only ultrasound to date your pregnancies, you should use the bigger twin to date your pregnancies. And you must remember that ultrasound dating becomes less and less accurate as pregnancy advances. Please try to do your dating scan before 18 weeks if you can. AFI. So you have two twins, they have two amniotic membranes. What do you do? This is one way of doing it. You just ignore the intertwin membrane. You go across the intertwin membrane, get one AFI, second, third, fourth. It's not very logical, really, but a lot of people do that. It's not very logical, because then you do not have any idea. It will only work if both twins have similar sized amniotic cavities. If there is asymmetry of amniotic cavity volume, then this is going to be very, very misleading. Don't use it. What about a single vertical pocket. You find the vertical pocket and you measure it for both twins individually. Okay? If it's less than 2, it's oligohydramnios, something like you do with singletons, same parameters. If it's more than 8, it's polyhydramnios, and between it, everything is normal. But the thing here is, what kind of a pocket are you going to select? Okay? If it's a very narrow slit, it won't work. Sometimes you have very narrow 4 centimeter slits. That doesn't mean that this is normal. It needs to be at least 1 centimeter across. Your pocket needs to be 1 centimeter across, and it needs to be free of your loop of cord. It needs to be free of any fetal part. And if you have a pocket that is free of a loop of cord, that is at least 1 centimeter across, that is free of a fetal part, then you can use that and do a vertical measurement of the largest pocket that you find. Okay, you can go for more numbers. You can try 2 diameters of one pocket, a vertical and a transverse diameter of a pocket. And since you're multiplying 2 numbers, you come up with higher numbers. So 15 to 50 is normal, less than 15 is only. I'm just telling you the sort of options that you have. If you really want to impress yourself, then you divide both pockets along the fetal diaphragm, and you take 2 vertical pockets so that you get individual AFIs of both fetuses. And 9 is average, 5 is low, and 16 is high. But you're adding 2 pockets, please remember that. But if you're careful, just eyeballing should be enough in most cases. Even eyeballing is good enough in singleton pregnancies, that you can have things like subjective oligohydramnios and subjective polyhydramnios. Or a lot of these, when people say lipid is adequate, I think lipid is adequate. We should press that. Although I take an AFI in every patient, I really don't think it is mandatory to do that. But if it is subjective oligohydramnios, then I think you need to derive some numbers. What about the guidelines? Okay, so this is a guideline from 2011. SOGC, the Society of Obstetrics and Gynecological. What is the C for? सुबह के वक्त मैंने याद किया. Anyway, ये क्या कहती है? SOGC क्या कहती है? कि for defining oligohydramnios and polyhydramnios, the ultrasonographer should use the deepest vertical pocket in either cell. Less than 2 is oligo and more than 8 is poly. The first slide? But you must be careful that you're following the full criteria of measuring the single pocket. Do not measure slits. I've seen some people measure very narrow slits, 4 centimeter की छोटी सी slit है 5 millimeters, and they're saying, okay, it's 4 centimeters, good, go home. Don't do that. And now we come to abnormal twinning. So, what are the problems with twinnings that you are likely to diagnose with ultrasound? You have low birth weight, you have discordant growth, twin transfusion syndrome, acardiac twins, conjoined twins, you have more incidence of congenital anomalies, you have co-twin demise, you can have malpresentation, lighter problems, and heart accidents. Let's see. Discordant growths. So one twin is smaller, and one twin is bigger. The first question is, what is significant? How much discordance is discordance? That is a question that you need to answer. And you must remember that if you're dealing with dizygotic twins, these are just 2 siblings growing at the same time. And they can have the same variation within normal limits. So, like a woman can have a 5.5 pound baby in one pregnancy, and a sex-bound baby in the other pregnancy. Similarly, you can have two babies that are growing normally, but they're growing at different rates, and they're growing at different rates, so they will have a different weight at birth. But just because that is the way they are, that's normal for them. But you can also have problems. You can have placental insufficiency, chromosomal abnormality. You can have discordance because one twin has stopped growing, it's died and stopped growing, and then you can have twin-twin transfusion syndrome also. So what is significant, and how do you define discordance of growth? If one or both twins have stopped growing over a 2-week period, if one or both twins have estimated fetal body weight at less than the 10th centile, if there is a 20% difference in the fetal weight at any given time. Okay, I use this very often, and I start getting the calculated weights of my twins very early on. If it's a singleton pregnancy, I will not do any weight calculations unless they're well into the 3rd trimester. If it's a twin pregnancy, I will start doing it at about 13, 14, 15 weeks. Okay? And if there is a weight difference of more than 20%, I will just inform the clinician that we need to monitor this patient more closely. That is important. This is one of the things that you do differently when you're dealing with twin pregnancies, at least in my practice. You start calculating the weights very early on in the pregnancy. So these are discordant twins. Well, if you're going to give a hard copy, it's always a good idea to give a hard copy where you have the same structure of both twins. So if these are heads, you get twins, head of one twin on one pane and head of the other twin in the other pane, so that the gynecologist can see for himself or herself that these twins are obviously having different sizes. So two heads different size, two heads different size, femora different size, two heads different size. Okay, two thoraces different size, two abdomens different size. So if you're going to give hard copies, this is the sort of hard copy that you should be giving your gynecologist. Okay, twin-twin transfusion syndrome. Again, something that is not uncommon at all when you're dealing with twin pregnancy. In fact, yesterday when we was doing hands-on, one of the patients that we were doing hands-on had twin-twin transfusion syndrome, one small baby and one normal-sized baby. So these are generally monochorionic pregnancies with intraplacental shunting. They show discordant growth. This is important. They show polyhydramnios, oligohydramnios. So one twin is larger and has more fluid, the other twin is smaller and has less fluid. And in fact, that is very often the first evidence that you have that things are not going well when you have asymmetries of lipovolumes. The smaller twin can die, and then you can have stuck twinning, which is again something that you need to be able to recognize in complications. So what happens, you have both arterial and then you have veno-arterial. So all possible connections are made within the placenta. And so there is one donor twin and it is transfusing the other twin. So the donor twin becomes olygemic and the transfused twin becomes plethoric. And since there is more blood going in, it gets hydropic, it gets polyhydramnios. So you have the single placenta, you have same sex. You know, there are maybe more than one case reports where monochorionic twins had different genders. And the way they explained it was that perhaps there was some deletion of the X chromosome, and so what was left behind was a Y chromosome. There's at least one case before where they determined that different gender twins were monozygotic. But that, well, I hope never happens to us. So you have a very thin intertwin membrane. You have combined oligohydramnios and polyhydramnios at the same time. You can have signs of hydrops of cardiac failure. You have discrepant growth. It's very often there. And when there is discrepancy, the smaller twin is the donor and the larger twin is the recipient. And this is what it looks like. Okay? So it's almost, you see this very thin membrane, and you have a big one here, and sorry, you have this membrane, and basically what is happening is that you have a small pocket of amniotic fluid here, and a very large pocket of amniotic fluid. So this is one of the first, this might be the first inkling that you have, that this is going to develop into a more significant twin transfusion. So you see this? You have this twin pretty well formed, but you have this amniotic membrane that is so much closer to this twin. So it is floating in a very limited amniotic fluid. Okay? So same thing here, you have this amniotic membrane that is sort of pressing the twin against the uterine wall. Alright? So you have this amniotic membrane. It is like cling wrap. Cling wrap, you got that, cling wrap. So it is cling wrapped around the twin, that amniotic membrane. So much so that sometimes you can't even see the amniotic membrane. And then the only way of diagnosing this is that the twin is stuck to the uterine wall and it's not going to move. You can shift the patient over, ask her to, walk and then come back after 5 minutes, but the twin holds its position along the same uterine wall. And then you're sure that you're dealing with this. Okay, here you can see the amniotic membrane, and you can see that you have a very large amniotic fluid here and a very small amniotic fluid here, and it is sort of holding this twin against the uterine wall. Alright, again, same thing. You have this amniotic membrane that is holding the twin against this uterine wall. Okay. Again, this is very early. This is like 12 weeks pregnancy. And already you can see that there is marked asymmetry of the amniotic cavities. So one twin is pressed against the uterine wall, and the other twin has a relatively larger amniotic cavity. You can grade your twin transfusion syndrome. There are 5 grades, and what you're looking for is oligopolyhydramnios, absent bladder in the donor. You can look for abnormal Doppler, which is absent end-diastolic flow, reverse end-diastolic flow in the vital artery, and reverse A wave in the ductus venosus and percentile umbilical. All the bad things that can happen on Doppler you get in these twins. You can have an absent bladder because all of the blood is flowing out to the other twin. There's not enough blood to perfuse the kidneys, which means not enough urine output, not enough to fill the bladder, not enough to make the amniotic fluid, and that is how it goes. You have abnormal Doppler, you can have all the features of polyhydramnios, and finally, one of the twins can die. You have something which is less intense, with the same mechanism than twin transfusion syndrome. This is twin anemia, polycythemia. Sequence of one of the twins is polycythemic and the other twin is anemic, but you have normal amounts of amniotic fluid. You need to have a very high index of suspicion to be able to diagnose these, and probably you need to do an MCA, peak systolic velocity, to get into that zone. Sometimes one twin will die, and if there are shunts, products of thromboplastic from the fetus will go into the other twin and cause infarction in highly vascular areas like the brain and kidneys, etc. And these can appear as megaly. All of these things can happen when you are dealing with twin embolization syndrome. Okay, but the commonest things that you can see is one dead twin and the other twin with a porencephalic cyst in the brain. And that is, at least in my practice, that's something that I have seen most commonly in the few cases where I've been able to make this diagnosis. So this is an obviously dead twin. You have overriding of the skull bones here. You have cross edema of the scalp. And the other twin, although it has a good size, you have this porencephalic cyst here. So this is twin embolizations. A cardiac twinning. One of the twins is bizarre. What is happening here is that there is large arterial to arterial vasculature. So one of the twins overpowers the other twin. The vascularity, the separation of the twin. And the pump of one twin, the heart of one twin, overpowers the pump of the other twin very early on, before you get to formal hearts have formed. It overpowers the pump of the other twin. And what happens, where do the arteries communicate? Where do the umbilical arteries communicate with the fetus? Umbilical arteries, fetus में कहाँ जुड़ते हैं? Somebody? D? Sorry? There is also आंखें भी कमजोर हो जाती हैं, कान भी कमजोर हो जाती हैं. So you have to speak loud. Internal eyes. Excellent. Great. So what is happening? You have, okay, you have, this is the overpowering twin fetus, right? इसके internal eyelid से blood जा रहा है कहाँ पर? Placenta में. और वहाँ दूसरे की artery में जा रहा है. ये कौन सा blood है? Is it oxygenated or deoxygenated? Deoxygenated. All right. So ये जा रहा है दूसरे fetus की internal eyelid. Internal eyelid से वो कहाँ जाएगा? Lower limbs में जाएगा ना? Actually external eyelid से जाता है, लेकिन internal eyelid से भी वापस जाके वो lower limb में चला जाएगा. फिर क्या होगा? तो पहली oxygenation नहीं है. जो थोड़ी बहुत oxygenation है वो सारी lower limbs को मिलती है. And so by the time it comes back into the upper body, it is completely devoid of oxygen. So what is going to happen? The upper body is not going to develop at all. So usually you have either no thorax, no heart, or a very rudimentary thorax, very rudimentary heart, no head at all. So you basically have half of the fetus. You have well-formed lower limbs, well-formed abdomen, no thorax, and no heart. So the donor might be normal, it might have cardiomegaly, it might have hypertension. Recipient may have absent or rudimentary heart and body. It may have absent or rudimentary head and arms. उसको blood ही नहीं मिल रहा ना, oxygen. It might have two-vessel cord, reversal of flow in the umbilical artery. It's really important कि जो normal fetus है, उसमें umbilical artery से blood fetus की तरफ जा रहा है या fetus से दूर जा रहा है, placenta की तरफ जा रहा है. Think, umbilical artery में blood किस तरफ जा रहा है? Is it towards the placenta, away from the fetus, or towards the fetus, away from the placenta? Towards the placenta, away from the fetus. Okay, so if you have a fetus where you have reversal of flow, reverse arterial flow, so you have reversal of flow towards the fetus, then you're looking at a case of TRAP, twin reverse arterial flow. So this is what it looks like. Normalish fetus, bad fetus. We just have the legs, no thorax, nothing. This is what it looks like. Just an amorphous mass with cysts. Some areas of the spine might be formed, lower limbs might be formed. You might be able to see the femur and stuff. About 30 years back, I started ultrasound. I started using a Toshiba SAL32B Perry machine. It's a small machine with a 6-inch screen with one linear probe. And about 2 or 3 months into my practice, I encountered this. I'm 30 years old again. So you couldn't save it on anything except take a hard copy of it. This is what I did. I had no idea what this was. It took me several years to figure out what I saw there. But I was so fascinated by this image. I could make out that there's a fetus without a heart, but I didn't know that there's an entity called an acardiac fetus. I did recognize that this is a fetus, and I did recognize that there is no heart, but I stopped at that. And so this is the first acardiac fetus that I was unfortunate to encounter very early on in my practice. I got the findings, but I missed the diagnosis. But these are more recent cases. Okay, and generally this is what you get: an amorphous mass with multiple cysts, which is the malformed or incompletely formed thorax. Okay, so ये देखिए क्या नजर आ रहा है आपको? This is arterial flow towards the fetus. This is reverse arterial flow. Alright? And if you have any doubt, you should try and find out the umbilical arteries going into that fetus and look at the direction of the limb. Okay? So you see a bit of the limb, you see this complex mass with a complex cystic area in the middle, maybe a bit of spine here, and surrounded by a lot of fluid. And you have arterial flow towards the fetus. And this is what you get when the baby is born. Right? This is really abnormal. Some bit of hair here, but no head. Maybe some rudimentary upper limbs. And this is a bit of the leg, probably Talipes here, I don't know when it's going to happen. And this is the happy, normal fetus that was born in. Then you're likely to have incomplete separation of the fetuses. And that will result in congenital. And we have some very interesting images of congenital. These are, of course, monochorionic, monoamniotic. About 10% of twins, and they can join at any place. And the term is cranial is where the organ or the structure where they're joining, and pagus is where is the term that is used to denote conjoined state. So how do you diagnose it? Very early on, you see that although the limbs might be moving independently, the area where the conjoining has taken place is moving as one unit. You should be able to see one thorax, that's the commonest. They might or might not have sharing of the heart, but it is generally not very difficult to diagnose conjoined training. And we're going to see a few images. Sometimes you can diagnose this very early on. This is like, what's it think? This is about 7 weeks. This is slightly bigger, maybe 8 to 9 weeks, and you're sure that this is omphalophagus and the two babies are joined at the abdomen. Okay, this is a bigger conjoined twin. I don't know why this was allowed to progress to this size. This is maybe late second trimester. But the interesting thing is that the two hearts are separate here. And this is my friend Shlomo Bobi from Jerusalem who sent me this image. And this is a local image, this is my image, and these are the babies that were born again in Nishtar. And you can see that they share the heart, part of the heart. And if you share part of the heart or another structure that is essential for baby's life, then they become quite inseparable, and there's nothing that you can do about it. This is a very interesting patient, dicephalic patient. And it was terrible. They delivered this at, this is what, 20 weeks, something, and I requested that can I call at the time of delivery. And so they had already delivered the baby, they put it in a tray, and the baby was alive, and it was alive for about half an hour. That was terrible. That was so terrible. It died in front of me. I don't want to see that again. Anyway, and although the parents opted for abortion in this case, maybe they were encouraged by the doctor, and perhaps they were encouraged by me also. There is one person in Minnesota, in the United States, about 30 years old, girl with 2 heads. And they go about in St. Paul, Minnesota, and they're talking to each other, and they're sometimes fighting with each other. And they have different personalities, the 2 heads have different personalities. But they're sharing the same set of limbs. So maybe sometimes one wants to go to a party and the other wants to go shopping, and then fighting each other. If you Google it, dicephalic twinning in Minnesota, you will find videos of her on YouTube, and you will find images of her on so perhaps there are more than that, but that is probably the most famous dicephalic adult person living at this time. So this is very interesting. You had 2 heads, and you also had 2 spines that were going down, and they were sort of fusing at the seam. Okay, so this is the same, and we published it in a journal, I don't know, biomedical research or something. Okay? The reverse. You have 2 bodies, but a single head, cephalopithecus or a dipithecus. And when I was doing the literature survey, because this was also published as a case report, when I was doing that, the first time that this was recognized was many thousand years in Greece. And in fact, they have statues of this, and they have drawings of this from about 3,000 years. And they have survived, and you can see them if you go on. So you have this abnormal shaped head, which is coming down and gradually separating, so that you have 2 sets of legs and 2 genitalia, and you have 2 bladders in this case. Parasitic twin. Sometimes in conjoined twins, one of the twins overpowers the other twin, and that sort of regresses into a vestigial state. And this was again something that was that we saw in Richter, and Professor Harun Khurshid Warsha successfully separated these, but we had to do a very detailed ultrasound of this baby, and okay, we saw that the liver was being shared. So this is one abdomen, and this is the other abdomen, and you have the liver that is going from here to the other leg. Okay, and the major blood supply to the abdomen was through this large vessel that was coursing behind the liver and going into the parasitic twin. And the gut of the 2 babies were separate, while the gut of the normal baby had air in it. The gut of the smaller baby was dense and hypoechoic and didn't have any. So that is what allowed us to diagnose that these are separate guts, and that made it possible for the surgeon to venture and go in and try and separate it. And the parasitic baby's head was just a vesicle full of fluid, no brain matter. So that made it easier, because you had to sacrifice the smaller baby. So that made it easier to separate it. Another parasitic twin, this time this is from Indonesia. A friend in Indonesia, and you can see that there is a big mass that is zipping out of the fetal mouth. And the differential diagnosis could be a teratoma, but you had a well-formed arm here, and probably he recognized this arm-like structure antenatally also before the baby was aborted, and he was able to diagnose this and call it parasitic twin lineage. You can have single, you're going to look at some images of one abnormal and one normal baby. So you have a normal baby here, and you have anencephaly, not anencephaly, that comes later. This is anencephaly, which is extreme hyperflexion, hyperextension of the cervical stem. You see this? See this? You see this? Pointing upwards. You can have one anencephaly, normal, no head, the baby has not formed. Same thing, normal, and this is probably saying this fetus, the small fetus goes on, big will be saying, same me big brother. You can have co-twin demise, you can have malpresentation, has like abnormality, you can have cord absence. Demise of one twin, it can happen completely, it's called the vanishing twin syndrome, but I have a feeling that a lot of people are misdiagnosing small subchorionic hemorrhages as a twin. And then the hemorrhage resolves and they say, okay, it's nice. If it happens very early in the first trimester, the twin can disappear completely. In the second trimester, it can atrophy, become macerated, or become mummified. We've already discussed this. And so this is co-twin demise. One twin progressing happily, and the other twin is small and atrophied and overriding skull bones and crowding of limbs and all of those other things that are happening. Normal twin, co-twin demise, has its own small amniotic cavity, but no cardiac activity. Co-twin demise, one twin, well-formed, big, late second trimester, maybe early third trimester, but no cardiac. Alright, so co-twin demise, vanishing twin, we've already discussed that. You can have cord accidents if the baby is monochorionic, monoamniotic. You can have cord entanglements, cord prolapse, nuchal cords, filamentous insertion, and with a preview. These are not my images, these are very common images that everybody shows. They're probably taken from the GE website. At least this is where I took those images, these two images. But this is from a friend in India who sent me the images. I'm so jealous of Lata. She's retired now, radiologist in India, in Bangalore, and she saw this cord entanglement, and then she saw this cord entanglement. I've never seen one in my life, so I'm very jealous of it. So, okay, what are the artifacts, pitfalls? You can have two placentas can appear as one placenta. A separating membrane can be difficult to see because it's very thin, or it can be difficult to see because it has degenerated as pregnancy advances, and a thick membrane may become progressively thinner with advancing pregnancy, and we have already seen that. If you're dealing with twins, always look for a third. If you're dealing with triplets, always look for a fourth. Because once or twice in a lifetime, you're going to do that. I've done it. I've done it. I've done my share. I've done my share. Thank you very much.